ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय करुणापूर्णसुदाब्धे कबलितघनविश्वरूपकिरणावल्या अरुणाचलपरमात्मन् अरुणो भवचित्तकञ्जसुविकासाय वन्दे श्रीरमणऋषे आचार्यस्य पदाब्जम् यो मे दर्शयधीशम् भान्तं ध्वान्तमतीत्यः अखण्डसच्चिदानन्दे परब्रह्मण्यलौकिके विलसन्तं गुरुं नौमिं सर्वदा हृद्यहं भजे. Day by Day with Bhagavan, episode number 9. 31:46 afternoon. Bhagavan was reading a letter from Mr. Appu Shastri, who had visited one Haridyal Maharaj living in a boat on the Ganges at Benares. The Maharaj, Swami, is reputed to be 200 years old. In this connection, Bhagavan said, "When I was at Gurumurtam, my nails had grown about an inch long, and I had a long flowing jeta, matted hair, and people used to talk I was very old in years, though so young in appearance, and that I had existed like that for centuries." The visitor referred to in the last entry told Bhagavan, "I am going back to my place this night. I have mentioned my difficulties." Bhagavan, "Yes, they will go gradually." Visitor, "I pray for Bhagavan's Kripa Drishti." Bhagavan did not reply. Only a few minutes before this, Colombo Ramachandra's two small girls had finished singing, and almost the last song, composed by their father, an ardent and long-standing devotee, contained the lines, "கண்ணாளை பார்த்தவருகன் கவளக்கரிக் களிக்காதத்தீம் அருணா அண்ணாமலை ரமண அருள் குரவாயிருப்பவரது மங்களம் மங்களமே." He who remains at Annamalai as the gracious Guru, who casts his glance on them, dissipates their sorrows and directs them to salvation. Night. A visitor, Ananda Swami, brought a reprint from the Hindu of some date in 1940, in which Maurice Friedman, a devotee of Bhagavan for the last 10 years, gives an account of how, under circumstances beyond suspicion of fraud, two women prayed, went into a sort of trance, and then got into their hands mysteriously and from nowhere some sugar candy and almonds. The Swami also mentioned that he had seen other instances himself like this, where people received fruits, etc., and asked Bhagavan what could be the explanation of such occurrences. Bhagavan replied, "We hear of so many things. There are certain sects which work for such things. They may see or get such things. But who sees or gets them, you must see that." In the Periya Puranam also is mentioned a similar occurrence. A merchant sent his wife 2 mangoes, saying he would eat them later with his meal. Before he returned from his business, a sadhu came saying he was very hungry, and the wife, pitying him, gave him some rice, and as she had nothing else ready to give with the rice, one of the mangoes. she hoped the husband would be satisfied with only one mango. The husband returned later and during the meal asked for the mangoes, finished one, and finding it very sweet, asked for the other one also. The wife was in a fix, dreaded her husband's fury, and went into the room where she had kept the two fruits before and prayed to God for help in this situation. And lo, one more fruit lay where she had kept the two fruits, and so she brought it and gave it to her husband. He ate it and found it much more delicious, and giving him an ecstasy and shanti which he had never before known. So he pressed the wife to tell the truth about this fruit and got it out of her. In wonder and still a little incredulous, he asked his wife to pray for and get another fruit. The wife said she would try, and by God's grace got another fruit also. Then it dawned on him she was a saint, and he prostrated himself before her, and thinking it was sacrilege for him to treat her further as his wife, left the village and went and lived in some other village. The wife, after some time, traced him out, and thinking that as he was her lord, it was her duty to go to him, and it was for him to do what he liked with her, she went towards that village. The husband, getting scent of it, told the villagers there, "A great saint is coming. We must receive her with due respect, ceremony, and pomp, taking out a palanquin and music with drums, etc." Thus he organized a big welcome and marching at the head of the reception party, prostrated himself first before his wife. The wife did not know what to do. She shed the mortal body and lived in the astral body and eventually reached heaven, taking her husband also there. The woman saint is Karaikal Ammayar, whose story is found in Periya Puranam. We also recalled an incident similar to that narrated by Friedman and this Ananda Swami, which occurred in Bhagavan's hall only a few months back and which has been recorded in this diary. Then a Gujarati lady got sugar candy in her palm after praying. At Mr. Balaram's request, the earlier volume of this diary was brought, and Mr. B read out the entry about the above incident as it took place, along with the name and address of the lady who worked this miracle. Mr. Ramaswamy Pillai, an old inmate of the ashramam, condemned giving importance to such occurrences. He said, "I have seen more wonderful things, such as a person put inside a box and sawn asunder and coming out whole. From such miracles, all that I have learnt is that we should not trust our eyes, that we should never believe a thing to be real simply because our eyes say so." Bhagavan also added, "We see so many wonderful things done. The juggler puts a girl tied fast into a gunny bag and leaves it under a basket, and the girl comes up from somewhere else when he calls her. There is such a thing as magic." By this time, it was time for our Tamil Parayana. We began with the 29th stanza in Ramanadeva Malai of Sivaprakasham Pillai, and by an odd coincidence, it says, "Intellect or buddhi does not see reality on account of Maya." And Bhagavan added, in continuation of our discourse, "Ellam Mayayil Cheyale." All is the work of Maya, quoting Sivaprakasham Pillai's words. 31/1/1946 morning. About 8:30 a.m., that is nearly half an hour after Dr. S. Rao had finished massaging Bhagavan's legs, Bhagavan said, "புடிச்சுருதிக்குறுப்போல் இருக்குது, பார்த்தால் ஆளை காணும்." That is, it looks as if he is massaging, but when I look for the man, there is none. About 11 a.m., a visitor asked, "Bhagavan told me this morning, unless one knows the reality, yathartham, one cannot get peace, shanti. What is that reality?" Bhagavan: "That which always is the reality. It is peace. Peace is another name for it." Visitor: "How to reach it, or how to get peace?" Bhagavan: "As I said already, that which is peace. All that we need to do is to keep quiet. Peace is our real nature. We spoil it. What is required is that we cease to spoil it. We are not going to create peace anew. There is space in a hall, for instance. We fill up the place with various articles. If we want space, all that we need to do is to remove all those articles and we get space. Similarly, if we remove all the rubbish, all the thoughts from our minds, the peace will become manifest. That which is obstructing the peace has to be removed. Peace is the only reality. Afternoon. Bhagavan was going through the new edition of Ramana Leela. He feels many errors have been allowed to creep in this edition. Some are due to the proofs not having been properly looked into. Mr. Venkata Krishnaya having been at that time suffering from bad eyesight. But some others are due to insufficient care in verifying facts. Bhagavan was trying to correct these. For example, he corrected 15 years into 5 years in connection with Bhagavan's horoscope given in the book. He found the direction and location of the river Papahara Nadi not accurate. Such mistakes go against Bhagavan's grain, and so he patiently goes through the whole book to discover them. It is too much of a strain for him, especially with his bad eyesight. 1:46 morning. The radio news announced the death of the Maharaja of Cochin. Bhagavan said, "Is he gone? We read of his illness." I said, "He must have been old." Bhagavan said, "Yes, another old person may be getting on the throne now. The one that has passed away got on the throne only a few years ago. Appan Thambiran, he had visited Bhagavan and written about him, if he were alive now, would have got the kingship. They have a long list of princes awaiting succession." I said, "They are generally not only old but very learned and religious, these Rajas of Cochin." Bhagavan said, "Yes, they are generally well read in Sanskrit. Even when Travancore threw open its temples to Harijans, Cochin did not." Balaram said, "When I was reading at college, the 42nd Prince of Cochin was reading with me. They have such a long list of heirs in succession." Attendant Krishnaswamy asked Bhagavan if Cochin was a big state. Thereupon we talked about Cochin being small, though Pudukkota was smaller. Someone said that Pudukkota became a state because its original owner betrayed his master and helped the British. From this, the talk drifted to Umayyan, who was a terror to the English in those days, whom the English could not capture for a long time, and who is said to have been finally captured with the help of the Pudukkota Padigat. Bhagavan then said, "There is a fort at Dindigal. The front entrance used to be guarded and we boys were not allowed to enter in. We used to go to the farthest end of the wall, climb it, jump down into the fort, and get out of the fort by a hole in the wall at the back of the fort, through which it was said Umayyan had escaped from the British. If we look at those walls now, we wonder how we climbed up and jumped down from them." Bhagavan continued to look at Ramana Leela and was discovering more mistakes. Afternoon. Mr. G. Subbarao read from Ramana Leela that Shankaracharya had told one of his disciples that Bhagavan was the third avatar of Subramanya, the first one having been Kumarila Bhattar and the second Jnana Sambandhar, and asked Bhagavan to whom it was Shankaracharya said so. Bhagavan did not know, but he said that Shankaracharya must be the one before the last, that is, the third back from the present one. Bhagavan also added that Shankaracharya came and met me at Skandashramam. He must have been repeating what he heard. It is only Nayana that started it. None said so before. Bhagavan came across in Ramana Leela Venkata Krishnaya's poetic description of Bhagavan's travel from Madura, that in the Vimanam of his body he was traversing Dharakasha or Chitakasha, and read it out to us. This reminded him of certain incidents in the past here, and he said, "Once when we were at Skandashramam in the month of Thai, we set out in a party of 40 or 50 for going round the hill one night. We all had a heavy meal before starting with puri, etc., and tea on top. They had taken in addition marundu, lehyam with opium in it as an ingredient. By the time we came near here, a Nambudri, Atmananda Swami, began saying, 'I feel I am floating on Kshirasagara and that a ship is taking me along that ocean.' Another said he felt that he was in the air flying in an airplane. Like that, Venkata says I was traveling in Dharakasha." Meanwhile, Ramanatha Dikshitar came into the hall. He has been with Bhagavan since 1912, and Bhagavan said on seeing him, he must have been with us on that occasion. On another occasion, when we were at Virupaksha cave, we had set out to go round the hill, and Chidambaram Subramanya Sastri was the leader of the party. When we came somewhere near here, he proposed that each one should lecture for an hour going round the hill on Guru Bhakti, and Ramanathan's was the first turn. They had all taken Marundu, that is Ganja, or began his lecture and elaborated his theme that Tiruvannamalai and Ramana, Chidambaram and Nataraja, and the body and the self are the same, and went on elaborating the theme and addressing ingenious arguments in support of the same with such fervor and spirit that he far exceeded his time limit. When he was asked to stop, he pleaded piteously for a little more time, so he was allowed to continue. Even after he had taken 2 hours, he would not finish, and he had to be stopped, and another was asked to speak. It was wonderful the way R spoke. None would have expected it of him. It was the next day he composed the song Tiruchuri Nadanai Kandene Mr. Balaram came across a passage in Ramana Leela in which it was mentioned that once at Virupaksha cave, Bhagavan alone was present and was working at putting up a small wall, and that when some visitor came here and asked Bhagavan where was the Swami, Bhagavan told him, Swami has gone out. Balaram asked Bhagavan, is it so? Bhagavan said, yes. Reading further on, Balaram came across the statement that the man stayed a little and not finding any Swami returning, went away, that he came again on the third day, that then too he stayed a little and finding none other than Bhagavan was returning, that while returning he met Echamma and was told by her his Swami was none other than the one he saw at Virupaksha cave that day and the previous occasion, that Echamma later asked Bhagavan whether it was proper for him to have misled the man like that, and that Bhagavan replied to her, do you want me to go about with a bell round my neck announcing I am the Swami, or to have a label on my forehead that I am the Swami? This led Bhagavan to talk of his early days, how when he went about with only an old codpiece and a small tattered towel, it was naturally not easy for anyone to think of him as a Swami. He said, when I was at Pachayamman Koil, I had a small towel which was tattered and torn almost to rags, with threads having come out in most places. Once a cowherd boy made fun of this torn rag by telling me, the governor wants this towel. I replied, tell him I won't give it to him. I never used to spread it out in public. I used to keep it rolled into a ball and wipe my body, hands or mouth as the occasion demanded with the towel so rolled up into a ball. I used to wash it and dry it in a place between two rocks, which place was never visited by any of those who were with me. Even my codpiece would be tattered. When the top end used to become worn out, I would reverse the codpiece and use it with the bottom end topmost. When going into the forest, I would secretly mend my codpiece with thread taken out of it with prickly pear thorn for needle, so nobody knew or suspected the wretched state of my towel and codpiece. One day somehow one of those who used to be with me in those days went to the place where I used to dry my clothes, and thus by chance discovered the state of my clothes. They then wept that they had allowed such a state of things, that they had committed an inexcusable sacrilege, apachara, and so on. They had with them in trunks whole pieces of cloth and so many towels, etc., all meant by them to be used for me. Only they did not know how badly torn my towel and codpiece were. Otherwise, they would have long ago substituted others for them. He added, our Muruganar has mentioned these facts in his songs and has described that I had Indra for my towel, that is, a towel with 1,000 eyelets or holes, and a codpiece stitched by means of a prickly pear spike. But one who does not know the facts may not be able to understand what exactly the poet meant. He also told us two stories from the life of Saint Sundaramurti. In one, the saint was doing worship with climbing brinjal, Tudavalai, leaves, while others took it he was preparing them for cooking. In the other, one Somayajulu got the saint's help through those leaves and secured the presence of Shiva at his yajna. 3/2/1946 morning. A visitor told Bhagavan that he was working for Harijan Uplift, that he and his co-workers in the cause had darshan of Mahatma Gandhi and got his blessings, that Mahatma Gandhi told them that if they could bring about marriages between Harijan girls and higher caste gentlemen, such marriages would have his blessings, and that he, visitor, would like to have Bhagavan's views in the matter. Bhagavan said, "If Mahatma Gandhi has said so, we will all hear what he has said. What more is there for us to do? He is a distinguished man and is working in that field. What have we to do with that?" Turning to us, Bhagavan added, "If I open my mouth, something will appear in the papers that so and so has also said such and such a thing. The next day there will be people to criticize it. Our business is to keep quiet. If we enter into all these, people will naturally ask, and justifiably, why is he interfering in all this instead of keeping quiet? Similarly, if Mahatma Gandhi keeps quiet, leaving aside all his activities, they will ask, why is he keeping quiet instead of engaging in all these activities? He must do what he has come for. We must do what we have come for." One Ananda Swami from Mount Abu put questions and got the following answers. Question: It is said in books that the Purusha is Angushta Pramana. What is it that is meant by it? Answer: Evidently, the books must be referring to the Upadhi in which the Purusha is manifesting. They cannot mean that the all-pervading Purusha is Angushta Pramana. Question: Is that Purusha in the heart? Answer: If you mean the physical heart, it cannot be. But the books describe a heart which is an inverted lotus with a cavity inside and a flame in that cavity and all that. In such a psychic heart, the Purusha may be said to abide and the flame may be of that Angushta Pramana. Question: Is seeing that light self-realization? Answer: Abiding in it and being in it, not seeing it, is self-realization. Question: In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens to the prana? Answer: It goes and merges where it came from. Question: I wish to know if there will be breathing then? Answer: It may not be then in the form of respiration, but in some sukshma form. They talk of Mahaprana. Question: What is Sahaja Samadhi? Answer: It is our Swabhava Sthiti. It is being in our natural state. Nirvikalpa Samadhi also means merely giving up our vikalpas. Samadhi is our natural state if we give up the vikalpas. Question: What is the difference between Sushupti Ananda and Turiya Ananda? Answer: There are not different Anandas. There is only one Ananda, including the Ananda enjoyed during the waking state, the Ananda of all kinds of beings from the lowest animal to the highest Brahma, the Ananda of the Self. The bliss which is enjoyed unconsciously in sleep is enjoyed consciously in Turiya. That is the difference. The Ananda enjoyed during Jagrat is Upadhi Ananda. During the greater part of the afternoon, Bhagavan was perusing a notebook in which Venkatesha Shastriyar had gathered together all the sayings of Ribhu found in the Upanishads. 3/2/1946 morning. The radio news announced that 4 to 5 lakhs of people had assembled to meet Mahatma Gandhi at Madura. Bhagavan said, "Where is the place to hold such a crowd? Perhaps on the way to Aragar temple." This led Bhagavan to think of his old days in Madura, and he said, "I had a relation, a sort of uncle, who was Manigar in the temple. So I used to go there now and then, and we used to get all respect and attention there. They used to make very nice Pongal Prasad there with a lot of ghee. Once they gave such prasad in a big brass plate, and as there was none else, I carried it all the way, nearly 2 miles, to that uncle's village. But I found the people in the house did not, after all, care so much for it, but gave away most of it to their servants. They were so used to it that it did not attract them. I used to go and play in the premises of that temple. There are various buildings round about the temple which, though neglected and in ruins now, were used by the Nayak kings. Tirumala Nayak is said to have lived there too. In those days, these Rajas used to fortify their hills and live there. See Ginji, for instance. The Ginji fort was built on 3 hills. They are all in ruins. Padaiveedu, nearby in this district, was once a great city. Hampi was a great city and the capital of an empire. It is said that the town was built on the model of a Sri Chakra, and that there had been some slight mistake somewhere, and that is why, though the empire flourished well for a time, it did not endure but failed. There is a rumor that a prophecy made by Vidyaranya, earlier a Diwan of Hampi Empire and later a Shankaracharya, has declared that when again a descendant of that empire or a successor of his in the Mutt builds a city on the model of Sri Chakra, a great empire will again flourish with that city as capital. Some people have even thought that the present Shankaracharya might be the person meant for such destiny. Our Nayana used to feel that as this town is by nature itself built on Sri Chakra model by the gods themselves, if only we could build houses all around the hill and make a city of it, this will become the capital of a big empire. He used to be always thinking and speaking of Swaraj, dreaming and planning for it, and saying what he would do when Swaraj is attained. People say there was a town in the old days somewhere here to the south of the hill. Who knows what will happen hereafter? Did we imagine that all these houses now here were going to be built? Bhagavan also said Aragar temple was regarded by the Saivites as a temple of Muruga, Lord Subramanya, even as the Tirupati temple, and that it was one of the 6 Padaividus of Muruga. Afternoon. Bhagavan was reading the Sthala Purana of Tiruchuri to see how the portion connecting Saint Sundaramurti with the shrine is dealt with. He was explaining it here and there to us, and while reading various passages extolling the saint, Bhagavan could hardly proceed, being so choked with emotion. At least a dozen times he was so choked, and he had to control himself and then proceed. 4/2/1946. Last night, Bhagavan read in Tiruchuri Sthala Purana that God appeared as Kalaiyar before Sundaramurti at Tiruchuri and asked him to come to Kaneperur. This word, Kalai, might mean either a bull or metaphorically a young and vigorous man. The book further said he appeared with a bouquet in his hand and weapon called churiyam. trident. To clear the doubt, Bhagavan said it would be better to look into the Sthala Purana of that Kanaiperur if that could be had. Muruganar said that he had presented a copy of that book to our library. So it was at once picked out and given to Bhagavan, who went through the book. This afternoon again he was reading the book. The doubt could not be cleared, as almost the same words are used in this book also. He read out some portions to us, and particularly the Sundaramurti Padalam, in which the following incident, not generally known, is also given. It seems when Shiva appeared as Kalaiyar and asked Saint Sundarar, "Why have you not sung on us? We live at Kanaiperur," the saint began to sing even at Tiruchuri, where he then was, and went on singing towards Kanaiperur. On the way, he stopped at Tirupunai There, the god and goddess came to Sundaramurti as an old man and his wife and asked him for food, saying they were very hungry. He cooked some food in haste for them, but when it was ready, the guests could not be found. Sundaramurti searched for them in the village, but could not trace them. When he returned home, he found the food got ready had also disappeared. Then Sundaramurti thought this the Lord's Leela, and a voice said, "What are you doing here instead of coming to us at Kanaiperur?" Sundaramurti replied, "What am I to do? You go and live in some forest. I hardly know the proper way to it." The voice added, "I shall be going on my bull in front of you. Follow the bull's footsteps." So Sundaramurti followed them for some time. After a while, the footsteps could not be found. Sundaramurti prayed again, and again the footsteps were seen and followed. After some distance, the footsteps ceased, and wherever he saw there were lingams. All were Lingamaya, Jyotimaya. However, Sundaramurti advanced in one direction, and then he espied the Vimanam of the temple. He and his party washed in the tank outside and wanted to enter in the temple, and lo, the temple disappeared. Then Sundaramurti thought within himself, "Is it because I did not come here first that my Lord is displeased with me?" and began to pray. Thereupon the crests of the Vimanam appeared one by one, and the temple was there. Bhagavan narrated all this to us and turned to Saint Sundarar's Tevaram on this shrine to see whether the last mentioned sentiment and prayer were to be found there. They were not found, but Bhagavan read out the Tevaram, and more than once, identifying himself with the bhava of those songs, was greatly moved and choked with emotion. But he did not lay aside the book as he sometimes does when overpowered by emotion, but controlled himself with great effort and finished the whole Tevaram. He particularly pointed out the lines in which the saint has said, "God is like nectar to those who meditate on him in reality in their hearts, transcending all bhava, bhavanatitam," and also the lines where the saint calls God his friend, Lord, and Master. He laid aside the book, and soon after Muruganar entered the hall, Bhagavan said, "He comes now." And I explained to Muruganar why Bhagavan said so. Soon after, Bhagavan began telling Muruganar almost the entire story I have recorded above. This afternoon, Mrs. Talayar Khan said, "Bhagavan, I must report the experience I had at Tirukoilur. Though I have gone to Tirukoilur many times before, I had not so far seen the temples, etc., visited by Bhagavan. So I made it a point to visit them all this time and purposely took our Vishwanath with me to show me all the places. We first went to Arayanalur temple. It was about 8 a.m. when we reached the temple on 2/2/46. I found to my dismay the huge doors of the temple locked with a big lock. There was not a person to be seen either inside or outside the temple. I did not know what to do. I was praying earnestly to Bhagavan that I must somehow see all the temples and the several places therein connected with Bhagavan's first journey. Vishwanath told me, "Let us go round the outer prakara and then see what is to be done." So I started going round with him. But I was all along praying hard to Bhagavan in my heart that I should not be sent back disappointed and that I must fulfill the object of my visit. As we were coming round, I saw at one place some water and milk trickling down from inside the temple, and I told Vishwanath there must be somebody inside the temple. But Vishwanath said it might be Abhishekam water trickling down. When I was turning round the fourth corner, what was my surprise to find the door slightly ajar, as if somebody was asking us to come in quietly on the sly. We finished the round and entered the temple. We found an old priest with a lovable face inside. He, however, did not speak even a word with us throughout our stay there. He did arati, archana, everything for us, and at our request lighted a lamp and showed us all the places as it was dark there. We came out and went round the temple again. By the time we finished our round, the doors had been again locked up and the old man gone. I feel it was only Bhagavan's grace that opened the doors and gave us darshan that day. Bhagavan asked Vishwanath, "Did you inquire and find out who that old man was?" Vishwanath replied, "No, I did not." Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sarvam Sri Ramanarpanamastu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.